Pride is the series of programs dedicated to the people whose names sway our hearts with pride and inspire us for our own endeavors. Our pride are Kazakhstanis who glorified our homeland living far away. It is a story of courage, perseverance, and well-deserved success. Our pride are the stars, businessmen, politicians, actors, and artists who've managed to stay Kazakhstanis no matter where they live. Hello, my name is Alevtina Madyarova, and today I invite you to Prague. The weather here in winter is perhaps not the hottest one, but the meeting that is waiting for us will warm our hearts. The hero of our today's program is Jamila Steklikova. Jamila Steklikova, Czech politician of Kazakh origin, psychiatrist. From 2007 to 2009, she was the Minister for Human and Minorities' Rights, as well as the chairman of the Human Rights Council of the Government of the Czech Republic. I think the same, but if I need to speak the same language for a long time, then I switch to the second, then sometimes I need to speak English. However, my English is worse than Russian or Czech. Then sometime later I freeze, then I speak quickly. And I realize that I can think in Russian, in Czech, sometimes in English, but the Kazakh language is the one I tried to practice intensively. The problem is that there is no environment for that. Of course, I read articles in Kazakh, I try to watch Kazakh programs on TV, and that really helps. When I hear the Kazakh language, I understand it 100%. The hero of this issue of Pride program can be called unique with any exaggeration. On one hand, Jamila Steklikova is the first Kazakh woman who managed to become minister in Europe and indeed abroad. On the other hand, she is the first minister of non-Czech origin in the Czech Republic. The event is truly unprecedented. However, when talking about this woman, we can list so many interesting, different, and exciting things that her political success on the general background seems less exciting. Our acquaintance took place in December of 2016, when Europe was in full swing preparation for Christmas. Now this meeting seems far away, but it brings out so many nice memories, and on the rights of good friends, we congratulate each other on Nowruz and other holidays. Wonderful, isn't it? However, allow me to share some details with you. Jamila Almasovna Steklikova was born in 1962 in Almaty, and despite the fact that she has been living in Europe for about 30 years, she remained an Almaty resident in her heart. At least, that's what she says about herself. But in order to check that, we offer a test on nostalgia. In our regular column test on nostalgia, we offer heroes of our program to look at pictures of items and characters that anyone who's connected with Kazakhstan, at least indirectly, can understand. This is certainly not a Rorschach test, it is rather a joke on the subject. And yet, what do you think this is? This is a flying golden eagle, a national symbol of Kazakhstan. And this is really a golden eagle, which was used by our ancestors for hunting. And this bird of prey can even catch a fox. This is a headwear for women. This is a classical dombra, and I played a similar one. I had a dombra just like this, but the teacher of dombra said that I have a big motivation and not a perfect pitch. My parents asked if it's possible to improve my pitch, but the teacher said that he can't do that. Not a pitch perfect, but I played with great enthusiasm. Our neighbors were very happy about it. I'm very fond of Kazakh national instruments, and I think that unfortunately, the tradition of ours dies a little. Not that it perishes, but the real music played by our ancestors in the villages is replaced by a professional one. But when I was small, my father and I visited the auls. We saw how people played the old way. Old Kazakhs sing a little different on these instruments. It seems Jamila will pass the test brilliantly, because you see, not everyone, even living at home, can tell so much about these things. This is a snow leopard. Snow leopard is the symbol of Almaty. It's probably in Almaty, This is the radio tower. Yes, radio and TV tower. It's one of the most beautiful buildings of Almaty. It was built in Soviet times. I think that this is a symbol of the city. And this is the mountain, right? Well, this is Bayterek in Astana. In mythology of this tower, it comes from Tengri. I studied the mythology of different people for a long time, and it seems to me that Bayterek has the features of Tengrianism and Zoroastrism.
Сидите, и вот здесь такая вот рука, это рука хозяина дома, это или предка. Часто уже его нет в живых, которая как бы охраняет. А заровень одновременно...
At the same time, it is a symbol of all the ancestors, of all of us, of the spirits that guard us and so on. So it's a beautiful building. Yes, I was there. This is a kobys. And it has been used traditionally and for a very long time. These were shamans, as they were called, or Kazakh healers, бахсы. Nevertheless, one picture was a little difficult, the subject about which we joke a lot, that it should hang in the house at the most prominent place, that when someone comes home and sees it, he sees that relationship between husband and a wife in this family are being carried out according to our old traditions, and the woman knows her place. Well, here it is. I do not know this one. Is it a weapon or a whip? Yes, this is a whip, kamcha. This is a whip. This whole time I thought it was some kind of a weapon, but it's a whip. But you shouldn't use it on your wife. Love and interest for tradition are usually instilled in the family. Jamila Stehlikova is the daughter of the scientist-chemist Rosie Simbaeva and architect Almas Ordabayev. I think we should begin our conversation from my parents. I have a few photos of them. This is a photo of my mom. This is a photo of my father when he was studying in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. On this one, he came to see my mother in Moscow. She studied in Moscow. This one is when my father got his first photo camera. Since then, he always takes photos. He's also a great researcher of the history of his native land, his people. It may be more interesting to say that my father's parents are from... The father was from southern Kazakhstan and his mother was from Ufa. She was Bashkir. This is the photo of my father and his parents. The grandfather always was close to his family. Another grandfather was the same. Kazakhs at the time cherished their families, and so education as the main goal. Education was always a ticket to a bigger world. This is my great-grandmother. She came to visit us not often, but I remember her coming to see us in Almaty. She had a black headscarf and read the Quran. She prayed a lot and explained to me a lot of things about Islam. Kazakhs have a nice tradition that relatives and the family stay very close to each other. This is my grandmother. Unfortunately, my grandfather had passed away. I like that when I travel to Almaty, we get together with my relatives and my family. Kazakh person always has the support of his family and always works for his family. I would start the story of my childhood, not of my time in Almaty, but from the time when my father and I would visit the aul. You know what was very interesting when I would go to aul? I would sleep over at different houses of my relatives, and each family would have a lot of photo albums, and in each of them, I would find my own photo. I would open the third, fourth page, and I would see my photo and my name, Jamila. It is due to the fact that the father of Jamila, Almas Pemuhanovich, as she said, always had his photo camera ready. That's why the family has so many wonderful pictures. And the stories. Almas Ordabayev himself, an architect, an archaeologist, cultural historian, researcher of his native land, always worked hard. And even now he surprises people with his active lifestyle and with a sparkle in his eyes. His busy work life didn't prevent him to devote a lot of time and attention to his daughters. He carefully preserved their photos, drawings, and other creative work. I wonder if Jamila Almasovna remembers her first poem written in an elementary school in 1971. Can you believe it? This one is very funny indeed. Poems written in the 1st or 2nd grade. She signs it as Jamila Ordabayeva, the best poet. Autumn cloud covers the sky, sun does not shine. The wind is howling and the rain drizzles.
Но потом все-таки больше солнца не блестит, ветер в поле воет, мелкий дождик моросит. Это были трагедии.
She looked at it as a tragedy. She cries when my works doesn't look so nice as yours.
Как у тебя.
For her it was such a drama, but she was able to identify so many things in the right way. I asked, what is it? She said, this is the factory, this is the building. But this worker ran from the construction site. One of the favorite photos of her youth was taken, as well as many family photos in the village Karakimir. It even became a reason for criticism at the beginning of her political career. Young Jamila in this photo is sitting on a horse, like a true nomad. So Czechs tried to use this photo against her. Yes, against her. Well, politics is all about that because it's not only about the fight between parties, but also personal ambitions of different people. They claim that she had a certain accent in Czech language. They said, how would she know their realities and so on? And they tried to confirm this belief, saying, how would she understand the realities and their mentality?
К тому, что откуда она может знать наши реалии и так далее. И чтобы вот подтвердить вот это вот утверждение, что откуда она может знать все вот наши тонкости, наша ментальность и прочее, вот, говорит, некая приехавшая не только...
They used to say, who is she? She came from the Soviet Union. Moreover, they would say she's from an empty steppe, the descendant of nomads, and so on. Somehow, this photo that is very dear to her, that was familiar to many of her relatives and friends and partners from party, somehow it was obtained by her counterparts, and they used it as an argument. Some wild nomads are trying to decide what is good for us here. And yet, no language barrier, no opponents' attacks have not prevented the heroine of our program to succeed. Joining in the early 90s the Green Party and preparing a bill to close old coal mines in northern Bohemia, Stechlikova decided to run for the government office. But the thing was, she could not run without a citizenship. She decided to solve the problem in a radical way. She sent a personal letter to then President Václav Havel, where she outlined her position and plans in detail. Havel supported a young politician, and on February 17, 1992, by the decision of the president, Jamila Stechlikova became a full-fledged citizen of then Czechoslovakia and later the first non-Czech woman in the Czech government. This is the Strakov Academy, where government is located. Of course, not the entire government, but those ministries which don't have their own buildings. But the government meetings, they're held in this building. I was appointed to the government in 2007, in January, and I was there until January of 2009. And it was very convenient that it was possible to go through the gate. There's a boat, and sometimes I went to feed the swans. Right over the building of Straka Academy, that is government building, there is a small house, you see? This is a so-called Kramarjova villa or Villa Kramarja. And that is interesting. You see the government building, all decisions are made there. There's a large hall with the government seats and votes. But the government votes on already decided things. All the negotiations are taking place in this villa. When there is a problem, people gather in this Kramarja villa. There is a large balcony there, men smoke on that balcony, and there is a rule. As long as we do not agree on something, we do not leave. Sometimes it took us all night to agree on something. And in the morning, we came to the academy building and made a decision. Journalists were surprised, for example, it was such a difficult problem to solve, how you were able to decide without arguments and long discussions. This is a personal residence of the Prime Minister, and journalists don't go into his bedroom, but he accepts guests at this residence. I have a positive memory about my work at the government because I was able to pass the law against discrimination. As the Minister of Human and Minority Rights, Jamila Almasovna achieved an adoption of anti-discrimination law which suppresses any prosecution of the 6 grounds, whether it be religious beliefs, national origin, voting age, gender, sexual orientation, or disability. As for the question of the closure of the coal mines in the northern Bohemian region, the struggle continues to this day. Tireless Jamila shot a documentary about the problem. For this, she entered the Film Academy. This is besides the fact that she writes Shejure of her family, regularly gets published in many international publications, gives interviews on radio and TV, studies languages, and most importantly, does not leave her medical practice. Having lived in one of the most beautiful cities in Europe for decades, Jamila Stehlikova does not get tired to admire its buildings and streets, but with no less pleasure each time she visits her homeland, but not as often as she would like to. Czech Republic is nice because there are no skyscrapers. There are no overwhelming buildings, even the government buildings, well, except of course the city hall, but its cathedral. It should exceed the size of the human. Our conversation during the walks came just at Christmas time. This means everywhere there were lights and decorations in every corner, and svarzhak, the traditional mulled wine. Well, in our case, the best seasoning for Christmas delicacies become vivid memories and interesting stories. Of course, the city is very beautiful. It is impossible to get used to it. But I have my hometown of Almaty. I feel myself as a guest here all the time. I feel myself at home in Almaty. There I do not feel like I'm a guest. And although there are new houses, and no matter many times I ask, I cannot even remember the names of new streets. Here in Europe, kings were strolling, walking in these areas. There are fountains and sculptures. Of course, There is so much of splendor. It's beautiful. But it suppresses at times. You feel yourself lost here. People feel like they're a grain of sand in this splendor. As well as the skyscrapers of big cities, Shamila Almasovna prefers low, cozy courtyards of old Almaty. She compares it to the central Prague with its small houses. Similarly, she likes small and quiet temples and mosques. She traveled around the world and saw a lot of different things. You go there and feel the spirit, the sacred presence. You feel uneasy. And in these huge cathedrals, you feel yourself like a small speck in the ocean. And you know what is interesting? You never expect at what point in this cute companion, a real Czech citizen, you will see the features of your favorite Almaty. Here below the level of the pavement, there are excavations which are dated somewhere in the 9th, 10th centuries. And when I talked to our Czech archaeologists, we talked about Almaty millennium. They were surprised. I showed them a coin, they looked at it and said yes. Then I thought and said that it's probably more than 1,000 years old. I asked how this Prague, when it celebrates its 1000th anniversary. Archaeologists thought and said, well, somewhere in 1,000, 1,100. Different opinions. Here, just under this pavement, there are excavations that are 1,000 years old. I say, well, why won't you celebrate it? They thought and replied, well, it's a result of non-farsighted policy. And it was said by the scientists, we should celebrate, and they would do it with pleasure. Stories of Jamila Stehlikova are full of interesting events. She met with J.K. Rowling and Svetlana Alexievich, Mikhail Khodorkovsky and Alexander Rosenbaum. Well, we all had a rough life. We had worked in the emergency room in Moscow. And there were 3 people in the car. We drove across Moscow, bad roads. And Rosenbaum still worked as a resuscitator. He studied at our institution, and we're sitting there at the station, and we would drive to the call and then wait again. And we were all sleepy, and we had a theory that it's better to not sleep because then you won't be able to wake up. We were sitting there, and Rosenbaum comes in and says, well, guys, come on, I'll sing for you to keep you awake. And he sang his songs about ambulance. And every time we saw an ambulance car in Moscow, we cried. And when the call came, we sat in the car and we felt that we were fulfilling our own duty. But he did not go with us, he stayed there. He said, guys, I have encouraged you, and off you go. I don't guarantee that Miss Stehlikova will prepare Kazakh beshvarmak instead of the traditional Czech carp for the New Year's table, but the fact that at heart she remains Kazakhstani is no doubt. Is it true that it's better not to show people how sausage and politics are made? Maybe yes, but if it's done well, people will still determine the taste, both sausage and politics. It is obvious. He can bungle something behind the scenes, but when he comes out on stage and presents it to the people, I think they will see whether he lies or not. Do you agree that only good prepared foundation, for example, the good origin, may be the key to success? Actually, I agree, but I have many friends who have been very successful and had no foundation. What is the difference between a person who has a foundation and who doesn't have one? Those without foundation had a huge success, talent, chance, luck, and they quickly finished their career because they were not able to stay on top. Because there were no work skills to open something new all the time. But those who have the talent and had a good foundation, they were able to stay on top, and I think that the start foundation are very important. What would you wish if you catch a goldfish? Well, I guess that I would wish for the world peace. It's funny to say, but the political situation in the world changes every day. and people do not have time to analyze it. And most importantly, they're not able to predict it. That is, if somewhere about 10 years ago we could predict the majority of world events, despite some local wars at present time, it's very, very delicate balance. And so I pray for it, so we won't have any major wars between large powers anywhere else in the world. What is happiness for you? Happiness, it's always finding more freedom and more opportunities, not only to help yourself, but also help others. What is the personality trait of yours you are the most proud of? It is hard to be especially proud of myself, but I have such a personality trait that I took from my father. 3 years ago, he said, "My daughter, you know how Mayakovsky said, I love our grand plans." And I realized, too much plans is not a good thing. And now I try to finish projects that I'm starting. I'm not interested in difficulties. Critics will say, "Why are you doing this? Why are you making this film?" Because you will never be like Foreman, of course. If you started something, you should finish it. Even though if critics tell me, "Why are you doing this or that?" recently, even if I begin to read a book, and it seems, well, not a particularly good one, an interesting one, well, the choice was so. But I finished reading it anyway. It is a moment that at my age people want to have finished things, that you can look back on and say, "This is finished," and I did that. What is the personality trait of yours you are least proud of? Well, I have a lot of features that I'm embarrassed about or that I don't like. I speak very loud. When I talk with people, I put pressure on them, especially with patients in psychotherapy. Colleagues told me, "You have to let your patient or client to grow on his own, but you're crushing him with advice." And recently, and I try to put less pressure on people lately, but it's very difficult because I want to do better. I want to help people. I would say, "Do it this way," and my colleagues would tell me, "Why do you give him advice?" I say, "I want to help him," but they say, "No, do not interfere." For what? You don't have time. I don't have enough time for my hobbies. I have such a hobby. I write the Shezhere of my ancestors. I have many ancestors from my mother's side and from my father's side, like every Kazakh. And fortunately, on each side, there were people who recorded oral history of our family. Many of them now visit the mazars of our ancestors and keep in touch with the rest of the descendants. So much information, and I tried to write this somehow through either artistic prose or a poem. There's not enough time. I've been writing about my grandfather, who was born in 1905. He died before Kazakhstan gained its independence. Well, life is complex. There were so many changes in the life of Kazakh people. And I really plunge into this environment. I really live in 1905. I am imagining how his uncle, he was Imam from Turkestan, came to visit, and how Aksakals came up with a name for a baby. In the morning, I get up and say, "Well, how do I go to work?" Aksakals didn't come up with a child's name yet in 1905. In this respect, I don't have enough time because when you're plunging into the past, it needs some time, at least a few days. What's your favorite day of the week and time of the day? Sunday, of course. Well, probably somewhere around midnight. A person does not have anything to do, but still cannot go to sleep. He can stay awake a bit, write his relatives and friends. Where do you see yourself in 20 years? It's hard to say. I think that, like one of my colleagues said, I would like to work as a pen, not as an axe. And I asked him, "What do you mean?" And he said that he would like to stop working and instead write his own memoirs. Speaking of memories, Shezhere that Jamila Steklikova writes is available in her personal blog. She's also very active on social networks, through which we actually met. Leaving Prague, I say goodbye to our new friend Jamila Steklikova, and I leave with a warm feeling that now in this city we have a new friend. And of course, one more reason to be proud. My name is Alevtina Madyarova. See you soon on Kazakh TV.